Have you ever had the feeling that the days are flying by? That what once seemed like an eternity now passes in the blink of an eye? When we were children, summer vacations seemed endless. Now, the years unfold quickly, as if someone had pressed a fast-forward button on life. But why? Does time really speed up? Or is it our perception of it that changes? This is not just a psychological question, but a philosophical dilemma that great thinkers have tried to understand throughout history. Today, we're going to explore why time seems to run faster as we get older. You'll discover how the brain interprets time, the impact of emotions on this perception, and what philosophers like St. Augustine and Heidegger have to say about it. And most importantly, how can we slow down this sensation and live more fully? If this topic intrigues you, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more reflections like this. And tell me in the comments, do you feel that the years are passing too quickly? Now let's dive into this mystery. Have you ever noticed how some moments seem to last forever, while others pass so quickly that we can barely register them? Time, in its physical essence, is constant. A minute is always 60 seconds. A day is always 24 hours. However, our perception of time is far from objective. What for a clock is just the regular passage of seconds. For the human mind can be a completely elastic experience. This elasticity happens because the brain doesn't measure time as a clock does. Instead, it processes time based on the amount of new information it receives. The more new stimuli and experiences we absorb, the more the brain expands that moment, making it seem longer. On the other hand, when we're in a repetitive routine with no new things, the days merge into an indistinct sequence, and time seems to speed up. That's why childhood seems so long when we look back. Each year of childhood is full of first experiences. Learning to ride a bike, the first day at school, the first friendships. The brain stores these memories in great detail, creating a sense of longer time. But as we get older, we fall into repetition. The work routine, the same conversations, the same routes. The brain stops recording these experiences with the same intensity, and the years go by like a blur. Another important factor is how focus and attention influence our perception of time. When we're bored or anxious, the minutes seem to drag by. But when we're absorbed in something pleasurable, such as an engaging conversation or a challenging project, time seems to fly. This phenomenon is called subjective time dilation, and is the reason why ordinary days seem shorter, while emotionally intense moments are recorded more strongly. But is this acceleration of time just a trick of the mind? Or are there deeper explanations for it? There is a fascinating theory that helps us understand why a year in childhood seems like an eternity, while a year in adulthood passes in the blink of an eye. If you have the feeling that time is passing faster and faster as you get older, you're not alone. There is a mathematical and psychological explanation for this, and it is directly linked to the way we perceive the passage of years in relation to our age. The French philosopher Paul Janet proposed an idea known as the theory of the proportionality of time. According to him, the way we experience the passage of time is proportional to the total number of years we have lived. For a 5-year-old child, a single year represents 20% of their entire existence. For a 50-year-old adult, however, that same year is only 2% of their life. As a result, each new year becomes a smaller fraction of our total experience, creating the illusion that time is speeding up. This perception is reflected in the way we look at the past. Ask anyone over the age of 30, and they'll tell you that the 20s passed much faster than adolescence, and that childhood seems to have lasted an eternity. This feeling isn't just nostalgic. It's a direct effect of how the brain processes time in relation to our age. But there is another factor that reinforces this acceleration: the repetition of routine, and the absence of new experiences. When we are children or teenagers, each year brings new challenges and significant discoveries. The first kiss, the first trip alone, changing schools, new friendships. Each of these experiences creates mental milestones that make time seem longer. In adulthood, however, we fall into predictable patterns. Careers stabilize, relationships become routine, and days go by without much variation. When we look back, we realize that the years have passed without leaving any memorable records. And this lack of concrete milestones makes them seem to have passed much faster than they actually did. The theory of proportionality shows us that this acceleration of time is not a passing illusion, but a natural effect of the way we organize our memories and live our routines. But can we stop this sensation? Or are we doomed to watch the years go by faster and faster? To understand this, we need to take a closer look at how routine influences our perception of time. Have you ever had the feeling that a whole month has gone by in the blink of an eye, but a single day, lived intensely, has been imprinted in your memory with a wealth of detail? This is because time is not perceived in a linear way. It is shaped by the way we live our experiences. And one of the main factors responsible for the feeling that the years are speeding up is routine. Routine, on the one hand, gives us structure and predictability. It allows us to be productive, organize commitments, and maintain a sense of stability. But when taken to this extreme, it turns life into an automatic cycle where each day is the same as the last, with no variations or remarkable moments. And it is precisely this lack of novelty that makes time seem to slip through our fingers. The human brain works like an archivist. It only stores information that it considers relevant or different from what has been recorded before. That's why, when we're traveling to a new place, meeting different people, or learning something challenging, our brains pay more attention and record these moments in greater detail. As a result, when we look back, that period seems longer and more meaningful. Now think of the opposite. Weeks that unfold in exactly the same way. Days filled with repetitive tasks, predictable conversations, and identical routes. As there are no new stimuli to record, the brain simply compresses these moments. And when we remember them, we feel that time has passed too quickly without us having any control over it. This effect can be even more intense in people who live on so-called autopilot, where daily choices are not made consciously, but only following established patterns. Have you ever had the experience of driving to work or home and then realizing that you barely remember the journey? This is a classic example of how the mind erases moments that don't require cognitive effort. The problem with this acceleration caused by routine is not just the feeling that time is slipping away, but the risk of looking back and realizing that years have passed without any memorable experiences. The real danger lies not in the passage of time, but in the absence of meaningful moments that make it count. If repetition robs us of our perception of time, what could expand it? The answer may lie in the way our emotions influence the way we experience each moment. If you've ever experienced a moment of extreme happiness or great sadness, you've probably noticed how time seems to behave differently in these situations. When we are experiencing something intense, whether positive or negative, the seconds seem to expand, while monotonous or neutral periods pass without us even noticing them. This is because emotions are one of the main factors that shape our perception of time. The human brain processes emotional moments differently from ordinary moments. When we feel intense joy, surprise, or even fear, our nervous system goes into alert mode. Attention intensifies. Every detail is recorded more precisely, and this creates a feeling that the moment lasted longer than it actually did. This is why momentous events such as an unforgettable trip or a great challenge are so vividly etched in our memory. On the other hand, When we lead an emotionally neutral life, without major ups and downs, time seems to slip away without a trace. This is because the brain simply sees no reason to record detailed memories of repetitive or unstimulating days. So when we look back, we realize that months or even whole years have passed without leaving any significant marks. There's also a curious effect that occurs in situations of extreme danger or stress. During traumatic events such as an accident or a risky situation, the brain goes into survival mode and processes information much faster. This gives the sensation that time is slowed down, as if every second were amplified. This phenomenon happens because, in these moments, the brain is capturing more details than normal, creating the impression that everything is happening in slow motion. The big question here is, if emotions make time more tangible and make it seem longer and more meaningful, then living an emotionally apathetic life is tantamount to letting time slip away. If days go by without moments of intensity, without experiences that move us emotionally, then it's only natural that time seems to speed up. Now think about your own life. Do you feel that your days are emotionally rich, or that you've been living on automatic? Do you remember the last month clearly, or do you have the feeling that it passed too quickly without anything memorable? Let me know in the comments how you've been living your emotions and if you feel this affects your perception of time. And if this content is making you think, leave a like to support the channel. Since ancient times, human beings have tried to understand the nature of time. Does it exist objectively, independently of us? Or is it just a construct of the mind? If time is something external, why do we perceive it so differently throughout our lives? These questions have been explored by some of history's greatest philosophers, and two of them in particular have provided profound reflections on the relationship between time and existence. St. Augustine and Martin Heidegger. Augustine, one of Christianity's most influential thinkers, reflected on the nature of time in the 4th century. For him, time did not exist absolutely, but only in human perception. The past is no longer real, as it only exists in memory. The future is not yet real, as it only exists in expectation. And the present is just a fleeting instant that slips away the moment we try to grasp it. In other words, time is not something that exists on its own, but a phenomenon of our consciousness. If we take this idea to the extreme, we can question, does time really pass quickly? Or are we the ones who fail to live it consciously? If the present is the only reality we have, then every moment wasted in distraction or empty routine is a piece of existence that simply disappears. Centuries later, Martin Heidegger took this discussion even further. For him, time is not just a chronological measure, but the very essence of our existence. He argued that human beings live under the shadow of finitude. The awareness that one day we will die shapes our entire experience of time. But instead of using this awareness to live authentically, we often fall into a state of alienation, immersed in superficial concerns and distractions. Heidegger warns us of a profound risk. Ignoring the passage of time means ignoring life itself. By living without full attention, without realizing that each day is drawing to a close, we end up wasting our time on things that don't matter. Only when we recognize that time is finite can we use it meaningfully, living with more intention and authenticity. If both Augustine and Heidegger are right, then the question isn't just about time seeming fast or slow. The real question is, are we actually living in time or just existing within it? And if the answer is the second option, what can we do to change that? If the perception of time depends on how we live our experiences, then the good news is that we can learn to slow it down. This doesn't mean stopping the clock or making the days longer, but changing the way we relate to time, making our experience richer and more memorable. The first step is to break away from the monotony of routine. When each day looks the same as the last, the brain simply compresses these memories, causing months or even years to pass without leaving any significant records. Introducing small changes into everyday life, such as learning something new, exploring different places, or simply changing the order of daily activities, can already create new milestones in the memory and expand the sense of time lived. Mindfulness also plays an essential role in this deceleration. Often, we are physically present in one moment, but our mind is elsewhere, preoccupied with the future, stuck in the past, or distracted by external stimuli. When this happens, time passes without us really experiencing it. Practicing the habit of being present in every moment, whether during a meal, a conversation, or a simple walk, can completely transform the way we perceive time. Another crucial aspect is the way we deal with our emotion. As we saw earlier, emotionally charged moments create longer-lasting records in the memory. This means that seeking out experiences that arouse intense feelings in us, be they of joy, overcoming, or even challenge, can make time seem more meaningful. A year full of new experiences, for example, seems much longer than a year lived in constant repetition. Nor can we ignore the impact of human connections. Deep relationships, meaningful conversations, and moments shared with those we love create memories that give substance to time. Human contact has a powerful effect on our perception of time as it anchors us in the present and reminds us of the importance of each moment. If we don't become aware of the way we live, we run the risk of looking back and feeling that the years have gone by without us really enjoying them. Time doesn't speed up on its own. It's us who, by falling into inertia and distraction, allow it to pass unnoticed. But the choice to fill it with purpose and presence is always within our reach. The feeling that time is speeding up may seem like just a psychological phenomenon, but it's actually a wake-up call. When we notice that the years are flying by, it means that something in the way we live is taking us away from the real experience of time. The problem is not just the speed with which the days pass, but the illusion that we will always have enough time for everything. Many people live in the belief that one day they will have time to do what they really want. Time to travel, to learn something new, to reconnect with lost ties, to change their lives. But this belief can be dangerous because often the after never comes. And by the time we finally realize it, years, perhaps decades, have passed without us having made the decisions that really mattered. Studies on regret at the end of life show a very clear pattern. People rarely regret what they did, but almost always regret what they didn't do. It's not just about big choices like changing careers or taking a dream trip, but also about the little things that could have given life more meaning. The time wasted on trivial concerns, the conversations we didn't have, the moments we missed because we were too busy with obligations that, in the end, weren't that important. To ignore the passage of time is to live on automatic, allowing the days to unfold without us being fully aware of them. And the more we allow ourselves to be carried away by this inertia, the faster time seems to go. When we are distracted, preoccupied, or simply indifferent, time slips away without us feeling it. But when we are present, totally immersed in life, it expands. The great danger lies not only in the acceleration of time, but in the risk that one day we will look back and realize that we let life pass us by without really living it. Time is not an infinite resource, and what we do with it determines the depth of our existence. The question that remains is, are we living each day with intention, or just letting it fade away meaninglessly? If there's one thing we can learn from everything we've seen so far, it's that time doesn't speed up on its own. We perceive it as speeding up when we fall into repetition, distraction, and purposelessness. The feeling that the years are flying by is not a physical phenomenon, but a psychological and existential one. The brain interprets time based on our experiences and emotions, And this means that we have more control over this perception than we realize. When we were children, the world was uncharted territory. Each discovery was new. Each experience was intense, and each day seemed to last forever. But as we grow up, we start to move along predictable paths, repeating patterns and avoiding the unknown. The problem is not just the routine itself, but the way we allow ourselves to be consumed by it. When each day becomes just a version of the previous one, time shrinks, hides, and dissolves. Neuroscience explains that new experiences create more records in the memory, making time seem longer. Philosophically, Heidegger warns us that to live on automatic pilot is to waste existence. St. Augustine, on the other hand, teaches us that time only exists within the mind, which means that we can shape it according to our conscience. But what do we do with this knowledge? The answer lies in how we choose to live in the present. If we want to feel that time is longer and more meaningful, we need to truly be in it. This means getting off autopilot, seeking out new experiences, allowing ourselves to feel deeper emotions, and connecting with the people around us. It means stopping putting life off for a later that never comes. Time can be an enemy for those who just survive rather than live. But for those who fill it with meaning, it becomes an ally. When we are fully involved in the now, time doesn't flow, it expands. The feeling that the years are passing too quickly doesn't have to be an inevitable sentence. We can make each moment denser, more remarkable, more memorable. If this video has made you reflect on the way you are living your time, like it now because it helps the channel grow and reach more people who need this reflection. And more than that, share this video with someone who also feels that time is slipping through their fingers. Maybe they need this awakening as much as you do. Now tell me, looking at your life today, do you feel that you are living time consciously or just letting it pass by? What can you do to slow down this feeling? Let's continue this conversation in the comments.